Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you. Another deep dive time here. Our favorite thing we do, just going through these deep dives of all these fantastic fighters you know and love. I have a special guest right here. I'm very excited about this one. Not only have you seen him fighting many times, you've probably seen this guy acting. He does some acting on some TV shows. What was the one I watched? Kingdom or something? You were good on that. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Joe Daddy Stevenson, how the hell you doing, brother?
I'm doing really good. I just got an iPhone, this new iPhone. I had an iPhone 6. Nothing cleared over, and now all of a sudden I can do Zoom calls with my buddies. So this is cool. I think this is the second Zoom call. My iPhone 6, man, it was old. So this is great.
I didn't even know that iPhone 6 would still work. You know, it's like,
oh yeah, it did. The little
like
button.
A flip phone. Yeah, that's fun. So Joe, I like to start off and a lot of people know your background. Some people don't. So, like, how did you get involved? What sports did you do growing up, and how did that translate over to fighting?
My next door neighbor recognized I had a bunch of energy, and he said, you should go out for the wrestling team at my junior high. My junior high started in 6th grade. I went out there and I saw it, and I thought there was going to be ropes and a ring, and it wasn't. And I was such a loudmouth that my coach made me wrestle the whole team, you know, king of the mat, to teach me a lesson. And in junior high, there's 18 weights, and there was 52 kids. And I wrestled the whole team, and I did really good on my first day. And I was getting up like hobbling, you know. And there's this kid, Tino Archuleta, who came up, and everyone was picking on me. He's like, hey, he just wrestled the whole team. Back off of him. Whatever he was before, he did what he was supposed to, and now he made it. And so, and it's weird because I ended up coaching his brother, Juan Archuleta, and I kept that love that I had for him in my heart, and it was really cool.
That's sweet. That's cool. That's cool. So, I mean, I'm the same way. I remember when I first went to wrestling, I thought you had to count to 3 when they found the back. 1, 2, and I was like, you just hit the mat once? And they're like, yeah, it's over. I didn't know that.
Oh, this is easy. Yeah.
Yeah. Once? Anybody can hold down for 1 count. I mean, have you watched? He hasn't even kicked out yet. So, yeah, I'm the same way, man. So, okay, you wrestle. And how did you do in wrestling? Like, statewide?
I took third. I take third my 6th grade year in league. At 69 pounds, and I had never wrestled before. And so my sophomore year, I took second, and my 7th grade year, I took second, and then I took first my 8th grade year going into junior high or high school. At that point, I started doing judo and jiu-jitsu, and I started because from the local area, Dan Henderson, who I coach for now, he was an Olympic wrestler. I used to go to Pizza Hut, buy shirts to help support him. Then he started fighting. And when he started fighting, I went from focusing on wrestling to where I was doing judo and jiu-jitsu, thinking, well, I might be able to do that. And so I got good enough to where, like, I beat when I turned 16, you know, you have to be 16 to get your blue belt. I beat the blue belt world champion, Moondall champ. My coach had brought him in because he wanted to see how good I was. And then from there, I just, I kept on, you know, training, and eventually my first fight came along, and this is before it was illegal. And I believe it was at in California. I had Gene LaBelle was my first, was the referee for my very first fight.
So Joe, not to interrupt, was it May 15th, 1999, Empire One in Corona, California?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is your first bout.
Which was actually the very first King of the Cage. It was known as TNT's production, which then the next King of the Cage became Boss Rutan's King of the Cage. And then, you know, the progression. You know, I was raised pretty much with the promotions being built and this all starting you showed up to a fight and you discussed the rules prior to the competition, or and
You brought your own gloves.
Yeah,
Brought your own gloves, of course.
Hard bangers with the knuckles cut off and the bar taken out.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to cut the bar out yourself and pull it out.
So Joe, your first opponent, that was Empire One. That's what it was known as. That's Ted Williams' event. Am I correct?
I believe it was called TNT Productions because it was Terry Treblecock and Ted Williams.
Okay. Now, you said how long were you practicing jiu-jitsu prior to this fight?
I started judo and jiu-jitsu at 13.
So
What
3
year would
years.
that have been?
I was 16 in 99.
3 years.
So you fight Joe Camacho. Do you remember that fight at all? What was like the background like when they were about the cops?
Every detail. After the fight, I was on the swing and some girl was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just swinging." She's like, "Oh," I was like, "You want to swing with me?" She's like, "No, you just fought my brother." I was like, "Oh," and it was really weird because I was still a kid, but an adult. I had at that time my first ex-wife lived with me, and was moved into my house. My parents were very you couldn't watch violent movies, but you could see movies with nudity, and evidently your girlfriend that was that was 21 could live with you, so that was cool. But
She was 21.
my girlfriend was, oh no, Joe Camacho was 27. I was 16.
And his girlfriend was 21. Chris,
no,
keep
my girlfriend was 21.
Damn.
And then my best friend Nick Laquette had lost a tough one right before that, so I was really nervous. So I went out there and I just gave it everything I had. After that, I had a lot of confidence, and a month after Columbine,
Joe, let's go through this. How did you win the bout?
triangle choke.
So
Triangle
his
choke.
first
Nice.
bout.
Now hold on, Mike, real quick. What do you remember the rules? Because back then it wasn't even MMA; it was
In
NHB.
California,
So
to make it legal, it was open palms, closed fist standing, open palm on the ground.
Yeah.
And then it was you could heel hook, you could slam out of a cement, everything else there. No headbutts, no groin strikes, no eye pokes.
Could you knee a guy to the head on the ground?
I think that was optional. I've had a few fights.
I'd say yes.
We're gonna get into that. Where I love that. I got a full Nelson on somebody and got to knee him in the head. I felt bad after.
So Joe, all right. So you've been training, for a few years since the age of 13. Where were you training at?
I was training for that time at Ted Williams' garage.
Okay, so you're with Ted Williams. How did you hook up with him?
Yeah.
My stepdad was my wrestling coach. He became, I met my wrestling coach. Him and my mom hit it off, and he was like, "Man, you'd be really good at this." I always took like second or third at state whenever I'd go in freestyle. I always had like Ryan Halsey, Jesse Juarez, Chris Lopez. I always had like a national champ. Even my buddy Joe always was ahead of me, so I was always taking second, and no one really ever. So when you don't have huge titles, people don't take your wrestling serious. But when you're still placing at those tournaments, you're pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So here's the crazy thing. Joe Parisian's on the undercard. He's 17. You're 16 fighting a 27-year-old. Was any red flags or any concerns coming out of like anybody on your side of the family in regards to this activity?
I'm the youth coach for the United States for the USFL. So I'm one of the coaches that coach the kids that make the team. A concussion on a developing brain is 10 times more likely to cause damage than on a fully developed brain. So looking at it now, wow. But at the time, I wanted to see who was better, and I wanted to see if what I was learning was practical.
That's wild. So your second fight.
That's why fighters, I got asked a question today. Here, I'll share this with you. This guy has got his master's. He was like, hey, can I say bye to a friend real quick? I just see somebody walking out.
Sure, go ahead, take your time.
Go ahead, we can edit.
Damn, I love you, buddy. I'm on that interview. Okay, it's like an hour, brother. All right, thank you.
He's hour.
We're good. Yeah. That's cool, man.
There's no way you guys get through this. There's no way you guys get through it, without an hour at least. So at that fight, Carl Parisian was on the undercard. Carl's a friend of mine. Ted was my coach. They threw this promotion, and then I think the next fight after that was.
Well, here I got it. It's June 1st, 1999. So it's less than a month later, and it's the Boston Invitational 3. And I mean, not only are you underage, you're getting on an airplane to go fight in Colorado.
What? Wait, what date was that? What day was that?
It said online June 1st, 1999.
Yeah, I think it was around then. I can't remember if I had turned 17 yet. My birthday is June 15th. It was definitely around then. Columbine had just happened 1 month prior. I can tell you that.
So here we go. You got a child that's a senior in high school jumping on an airplane.
No, it was a junior. I was a junior.
Junior.
My junior
16.
Year. I was. Okay. I graduated at 17.
Okay.
Oh, still young.
Yeah, I turned. Oh, by the way, I graduated high school, turned 18, and got married 3 days in a row. We'll get to that though. We're not there yet.
Wow, that's nuts.
So Joe is not living life like a traditional person in high school, and I'm sure there's some sort of federal charges that may have expired since this time period. But you go fight on John Peretti's
He was the matchmaker for the UFC.
That he was not only the matchmaker, he was also the referee for that event.
He told me and Jens, whoever wins this fight is in the UFC. Imagine hearing that at 16, bro.
So, are you kidding me? They can't even do that. I mean, did he not know you were 16?
No.
Yeah. Well, so what happened was right before that fight, I'm fighting Steve Horton. And if I would have known Steve Horton was number 4 in the United States in wrestling, I wouldn't have fought him.
Yeah.
Well, wait. Let me set this up. So he flies across, a couple states. He's in a 4-man tournament.
No. We drove, bro.
Oh, you drove?
Where do you get this money from? Where does he get Chris? This is in the 90s and early 2000s. There was no money for flights. We drove. There was many of us fighting.
$1 a gallon. You could actually drive back then.
You might have got $100 and you're like, I get $100 a fight? Yes. Happy.
No. I got paid $100 for the no, I don't even know if I got paid $100 for the fight against Joe Camacho, but I got a free tap out t-shirt from Charles and Danny.
There you go.
Worth it.
And then for the tournament against Jens with Steve Horton, who I'm about to fight, it was winner takes all $500.
Oh. So Steve Horton is the first opponent, super high-end wrestler, but he refuses to learn jiu-jitsu. Phenomenal shape, rugged.
Lucky for me.
And he only fought tough guys. Like if you look at his record, you're gonna go, oh, this guy's tomato can. But then, like, you look at it, you're like, man, out of 11 fights, 9 of them fought in the UFC. Like, he only fights tough guys, and he refuses to learn jiu-jitsu. So, Steve Horton, go ahead.
How'd that fight go? Tell us how the fight went.
I jumped into, it was a ring, so I tried to jump over the ropes, and I fell. I went to touch gloves with him. He touched gloves. I circled. He went into for a combination. I shot. He started to bring me back up and threw me in the head and arm. I pushed out on the elbow, put a hook in. He started to stand up, and I choked him out with an RNC standing.
Standing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I got a question. At this point, are you doing any stand-up like striking training, or is it mainly
I
just
didn't
ground?
learn to box until I was 18.
Okay.
I learned to box when I was fighting Thomas Denny because I wanted to hit him.
Okay.
So you get through Steve Horton. Now, I mean, we got to remember, you're still a child. There's got to be an adrenaline dump, a rush. Now you've got to wait in between fights. You said you had talked to Peretti. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're getting ready to fight, and Peretti's like, literally, right when we shake hands and doing the rules, he says, winner of this is in the UFC.
We were like,
And-
oh my God.
No, I didn't care at the time until after, you know.
Really?
Because the UFC was like, that's where people fought, but really we were fighting to fight. You weren't fighting to make it to the UFC. You were fighting to be the best fighter in the world. And it didn't matter if it was Pride, didn't matter if it was UFC, those were the major organizations and the only organizations, but you knew who was tough. Just like now, you know, like having a good manager and having a great record doesn't make you the same person.
Now,
Okay.
so real quick, this has to help you in high school. I mean, everybody's going to be like, oh my God, you know, it didn't suck, did it?
Well, I, at the time, would use my wife to be's car and drive to school. And I didn't have a license, and the proctors would come to my fights and some of my teachers. So it was pretty cool. You know, my senior year, I was 17. So I wasn't that kid that could check himself out of school, but I missed a lot of school. But then fighting Jens, I'm sorry, I get off the track because my senior year, this is all before my senior year. This is still my junior year. So the junior year with Jens, I think we touched gloves. We're moving. He throws a jab, and I'm thinking about shooting, and he connects with the right hook. I don't think I was knocked out looking back at it now. I think I'd never been in so much pain. You could see in the video, I drop and I'm still holding my head. That's not the actions of somebody that's unconscious. No. I spit blood for a month after that. I remember my mom thinking, my mom was like, hey, it's too dangerous. And wrestling's too dangerous, or football's too dangerous. I'm spitting blood just thinking that.
So what do you think? You think you cracked your orbital bone?
No, I broke my orbital. Yeah, no, it's fractured. Yeah. I've taken x-rays and people are like, oh, you know, you have had a fractured orbital. Yeah, multiple times.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
So you lose to Jens Pulver. How is it dealing with that mentally?
I mean, at that point, let's see, I'm about to be a senior in high school. I didn't make grades my junior year, so I've got a little pressure on me. I just took third in Western regionals for wrestling. I was feeling good as a 17-year-old, I just turned 17. And then I think before my senior year, that same summer, I fight Chris Brennan.
Well,
and
no, wait,
I didn't care. I didn't care about losing.
Here we go. So Jens Pulver, just so you know, he gave an interview saying that if you would have tried to pull guard or stood up, his hand was completely broken and he would have stopped fighting. That's how hard of a punch Jens Pulver threw.
Yeah.
Now after this, you get Chris Brennan. So that's it.
I mean, these are just tough fight after tough fight after
yes.
tough fight.
And he's not even graduated high school yet. With Chris Brennan, is at King of the Cage 1. There's a lot of hype behind you. There's somewhat of a rivalry. You know, Chris Brennan isn't one to back down. And Chris, when we interviewed him, said, Joe Stevenson was calling my house to taunt me.
But that's not true. I didn't have Chris Brennan's number.
Oh,
remember,
you didn't?
I'm a 16-year-old. No, I just turned 17. I never called him. He knows that. He like what makes me, I think Chris is a good guy, and I understand. He explained it to me. He said a lot of people were talking trash, and there was a lot of hype, you know, and I didn't want to lose to a kid, and I was very nervous and scared, and I understand that. And he apologized like 10, 20 years later. But here's the fact. I didn't own a cell phone until I was 18, and I sure as hell didn't have his number. I didn't call him. Maybe people talk trash or people were hyping me up or whatever, but that had nothing to do with this kid. I went to touch gloves with him. He swung on me. I shot. I got a double leg, and he jumped into a guillotine. I realized that I was about to get choked out, so I picked him up and I slammed him into the crossbar of the door as hard as I could, making him let go. I went into a rage and have never been swept from side control. Like I was punching him so much that he sat up and just swept me. So then I was just in a rage. I couldn't believe that he swung on me. So then I reverse him and get back up on top, and he jumps into a triangle. I just talked to Larry Landless about this. He was the officiating ref. And I tap, and he holds it. And Larry has to forcefully pull him off of me until I'm unconscious. So whatever he says to you about anything, that's the exact facts. And you can watch the film and see it. Now, do I understand? Yeah, he's had already fought in the belt for the belt in the UFC against Pat Miletich. Heck yeah. You know, and Chris is great. And I don't have anything against anyone for what happens in a fight, because that's its own entity. And afterwards, you know, out of the rage, he apologized a few years later. And I accept that. Just like with the whole, you know, there were the class action thing was coming up. They're like, oh, you want to do this? And I was like, no, I signed my contract for what I know. I knew what I was doing. That's what I wanted. It's my handshake is my word. I'm not doing anything else. It's the same thing with the fight. I'm like, oh, that's what happened. And I understand.
I agree.
Yeah. So the King of the Cage crossbar, like in essence, what he's explaining is in the cage, every corner has a pad on it, except where the door opens and closes. And most doors now open like on the end of the cage. So it's padded. The King of the Cage was like right in the middle of the fence, like of the wall, the fence wall. So there was no padding on it. And Joe, I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. Like I've watched probably all of these fights except two. You were very mean. You were not a very nice fighter.
Well, you have to remember,
the name of the game.
I went to touch gloves with him to be nice, and he swung on me. And then, what am I supposed to do? Like in a fight, it is best to do unto others before they do unto you. and I'm a firm believer in that.
Well, Joe, they always talk about forgiveness, turn the other cheek, be the better person.
I'm baptized and I believe it. And I would go to hell for my children. Like I would give up eternity for my children.
For sure.
I understand that. When we sign a contract, I can't stand these people that sell 700 tickets, get pushed a tomato can, and then like, oh, well, I'm fighting this guy and, you know, he couldn't tap, so I just let it go and do that. I don't know. We fight to fight and see who's going to win in the fight.
Yeah.
You know, that person, when I'm coaching somebody against somebody that has a disability, we attack the disability. It's a fight.
Yeah. So what I was going to finish my statement, but they never tell you how good revenge feels. That also feels very good. It's also a sentiment that should not be ignored. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
So
it all
after Chris Brennan.
But let me, if I could, Joe, there's one thing I try to place it, and it could go either way here. Were you big in high school, like with wrestling and that sort of stuff, and that was your community, or did you do a little street fighting too?
No. I went to one high school when I was a freshman. I transferred to another high school my sophomore year. People would make fun of me my sophomore year because, I only had like 3 pair of pants that whole year. You know, it's not like we had money. And so my senior year, things kind of changed. Like I remember walking up to the captain of the football team and saying, "Hey man, you were in class and you said that about," like I was literally wearing my dad's shirt to school because I didn't have a shirt. And he happened to make a joke about that. And it was in my world history class. I was like, I was cool with it. I didn't say anything. And then I walked up into like the senior lawn and I walked up to him and I go, "Hey, you know what I do, right?" And he was like, "Well, yeah." I was like, "You know, I fight for real." And I was like, "We can meet right now." I said it in front of everyone. We can go after school into the desert so no one gets in trouble and we can fight. And I'm going to show you why you shouldn't talk to me that way. And immediately he apologized. And
Smart move.
What makes you captain?
I've only done a few things in my life other than training for combat and for fighting. I've bounced a little bit, you know, to make ends meet, did some moved some tires and did some concrete, but no more than like 6 months of my life has ever been anything else but training.
Wow.
I reached 10,000 hours in the sport before I was 17. I currently reach 10,000 hours of training every 6 years. If you trained 5 hours a week for 38 years, it would take you 38 years to reach 10,000 hours.
Man.
Wow.
Yeah, so roughly, I jumped on that math. It's roughly 38 years, just so you know.
And it seems like almost from the start, like, sounds like you had like a professional approach at it. You know what I mean? It's like with long-term goals.
Except the sport was so new, I didn't have the professional advice.
Yeah.
You know,
you pick it up as you go along.
Who are you listening to?
Like, dude, before that fight with Chris Brennan, I remember being told by a very good friend of mine how to order beer because I was in the bar because no one carded me because I was fighting, you know. Yeah. And they were like, I remember ordering 2 beers and I was taught to order 2 beers because when you finished the first one, you still had something to drink while you'd order the other one. That's not a joke. That's how I approached my life.
Yeah.
So
you learn that at a young age.
Yeah.
Interesting. Your career is pretty interesting at this point too, because you fight a guy named Mo Doom, Maurice Wilson, Extreme Fighter Challenge, February 2nd, 2000. Mo Doom has got a win over Shannon Rich, and he trained. I think he was one of Marc Kerr's guys. And
so now you've reached 2 people that have passed away. So the first one is Joe Camacho. I'll have a rematch with him. We'll probably get to that, but he had passed away. He's a great guy. And now Maurice Muldoon. Now Maurice, I really liked him. That was in Arizona.
Chris, I think that's you. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
So Maurice Muldoon I fought in a nightclub in Arizona. I beat him the first 3 rounds, but then they started chanting one more round, and we had to fight another round. And I gassed, and he got the W.
Who was the promoter?
Some guy in Arizona. I had won the Rage in the Cage belt shortly after this.
Yes. So was it the same promoter, Roland Soria?
No, it was a nightclub guy. I'm pretty sure maybe it was Cruz guy. It was, you know, I think I'm still in high school. What year is it?
It was 2000. Was it Bob Carmel?
What year 2000? What did
February 2nd, 2000.
Yeah, I'm still in high school. I don't remember, buddy.
Dude, I've done a ton of research. Mo Doom is a fascinating character. He's got very few fights. His name was Maurice Wilson, went by Mo Doom, trained with Marc Kerr. I did not know he passed. How long after this fight did he die?
After I rematch him and beat him. Wait, is there a rematch in there?
There is. There is a rematch later on. But Chris Lytle, check this out. He's got 2 losses in a row, which is not easy, especially when you're talking about a kid that's still in high school. On April 15, 2000, King of the Cage 3, it's no longer Bas Rutten. I think King of the Cage and Bas Rutten went separate ways. And he fights Toby Imada.
Wow.
Toby was already the neutral grounds champ.
Toby Imada later on, for those of you guys
Chris,
at home that don't know.
Are you at the station, brother?
Yeah.
Are you the first? That's awesome, man. My
Save
uncle
the
loves
lives
you.
and property.
My uncle
What's
got
that?
his gold axe. My uncle got his gold axe from Pendleton. He loves you.
Really?
Oh,
Well, he's
David,
a
yep.
smart guy. Tell him thank you for watching.
No worries.
So Toby,
Yeah, I'm
shortly thereafter, let me just kind of frame this. He's got submission of the year with the reverse triangle over Jorge Masvidal and Bellator. It's a match that obviously went viral, and you've got him coming off 2 losses. He's 10-4 out of Hoyler Gracie's a kid, Victory MMA, and that's not an easy fight.
No, but they decided to allow knees to the head to a downed opponent. And that really allowed me to get some I got him in an Iowa stack and just started kneeing him, and I saw his mouthpiece come out of his mouth. When his mouthpiece came out of the mouth, I think I need him one more time, but then I stopped because then I could have really I didn't notice that his mouthpiece came out until after I threw the knee. And then when I saw the mouthpiece come out, I was like, I think I just moved on.
You know what's nice? When knees to the head were legal, which, you know, I love getting people on that and leaning them in the head, but it seemed like you do like 2 of those, they'd always kind of roll over and give up their back. And like, that's an honorable way. Like, okay, give me the choke and then like tap me out, please. Like, okay, there's more honor in that, I think, is what they thought. So that was what I noticed from knees to the head on the ground. People always, you don't take too many of them. After a couple, like, okay, go ahead and get this. Is that what happened?
Yeah, well, he ended up, because we were next to the fence. He couldn't step up, and I was kneeing him, and I think he rolled over to his back, and I went into his half guard or something like that. But yeah, very similar. I've only watched that fight one time. All right, so Joe, fight, I only watched it once.
I highly recommend you watch the beginning of this fight again because you're getting interviewed by Eddie Bravo, and dude, Eddie Bravo. You can say whatever it is you want about him. That guy, in terms of information, has helped me out greatly because he hits who's your gym, who's your corner.
Here's the hard part, though. At the time, my coach is teaching me that people like Eddie and stuff are our enemies and Gracie's are our enemies because I'm going through that. Whereas now, I'm like, man, try to cross-train and get – but it was just a different time.
Yeah.
Well, in the background, when you're getting interviewed, it's kind of like before the venue opens. So you got like your snack counter and – your tables, you see Scrape from Tap Out passing a joint with somebody. They're just kind of like not understanding they're on video and are smoking weed.
It might have been a cigarette. We don't know.
No, that was weed.
Some people roll cigarettes, Mike. Come on.
Oh, it's true.
Come on. You don't know that for a fact.
You've never had a spliff? You've never had a spliff, Mike?
I haven't drank since I was 18, bro.
No, a spliff is when they roll. Oh, I found out about what a spliff was in England. They were like, oh, yeah, you put a little tobacco, you put a little bit of cannabis with your tobacco. And I was like, what? Yeah. They're crazy. Yeah.
So you fight in California, the Huntington Beach Underground Paint Race.
I had to do dude, that's one of those fights where we had to negotiate the rules. Dave Roberts was 210 pounds. I had to fight. So you're at Dave Roberts.
What were you weighing at the time?
Still in high. I wrestled 170 and I didn't cut.
Okay. Well, I mean, okay, so you're still wrestling at this point? I mean, was wrestling just kind of like secondary where you're like, or was it just, I mean, fighting had to take over, right?
My coach, I wanted to hear our national anthem on the podium for the Olympics in wrestling.
Oh, shit.
And my coach at 15 came over, had dinner with my parents and said, listen, Joe's a great wrestler. He's never going to be the best wrestler, but he could be a great fighter and he should do this. And so I started doing wrestling for a little bit for fun and didn't take it as serious as I did my fighting. However, now in retrospect, I feel like I should have continued to wrestle and given it equal. But I mean, I did well. I took 7th in junior college at 197. Because I didn't want to cut anymore. And I was fighting at 170 at the time.
You 197?
Yeah, 174 was the toughest weight in the college because I had Jesse Juarez, Chris Lopez. 84s had Philip Miller, who I was coaching from my team and fighting in undefeated in the UFC. He retired. It was crazy. And then so 97s was the next best bet for me.
So Philip Miller.
We're talking about Dave now, huh?
Yeah, so Philip Miller, was unceremoniously like kind of kicked out of the UFC.
No, the UFC wouldn't pay him half of what they were going to pay
Phil Baroni.
Yeah, and according to Philip's contract, it said he had to be paid half of what the other guy was getting, and they didn't do it. So Philip didn't fight, and then I went and cornered Philip for his last fight again. I cornered him for all of his fights, and then we cornered him in I believe hook and shoot for his final fight against a really good Brazilian from American Top Team, and we beat him, and then he's now a police officer for Los Angeles County.
Wow, that's cool.
So what did he end up at?
Philip was like 9-0, 8-0, undefeated, retired.
Yeah, retired.
Now I got it in front of me. Interestingly, I was the matchmaker for his last fight then again.
Oh, for hook and shoot, yeah. And when I went out there, I was 18. I was maybe 19 for that hook and shoot. And it was a crazy time. That was still a little bit of the Wild West.
So with this match against Dave Roberts, because like MMA is illegal in California, a lot of times they said, oh, this is a movie. We're filming a movie right now. Was this one of those situations?
Nah, we said, okay, open palm, standing and on the ground, and everything else. You could slam out of submission, everything. So I had to pick between him or Quentin, and I picked Dave. I watched Quentin powerbomb a guy. I was like, oh man, I'm glad I didn't get powerbombed. But then with Dave, I kept faking the leg lock and hitting him in the head. Faking the leg lock, hit him in the head, and it was connecting hard. And he didn't want to answer the bell in the second round.
And those are open palm hits too, right?
Yeah, but when you look at a heel hook and you fake it, and then the guy reaches up and you jam your palm up down his nose as hard as you can, and then there's no ability to bounce because the cage the ground is there.
Yeah,
it could be pretty detrimental. He was against the fence and the ground.
yeah. No, I fought in pancrase in Japan a lot, and I know I've seen some nasty open-handed cuts. I mean, just like, man, you can hit people pretty hard still.
Yeah. So he didn't answer the bell, and then I was like, all right, cool. And I think then at that point, I think I've graduated high school.
So at this
point, I might be 18. Am I 18 at that? What's the date on that?
It is May 13th, 2000.
No, I'm 17.
At this point, your senior year of high school, I think your father passed as well. Am I correct?
My father and my grandfather. And my grandfather was a POW in World War II, was the first Mexican licensed plumber in Los Angeles. Very proud. Raised me when my mom was away for 3 years. Raised me and my sisters. So him passing was very difficult. And my father passing was very difficult. My father, the only thing in his wallet besides his bank card and his ID was a picture of me and my wife to be. And I had visited him while he was on hospice at the point where he had offered me opium and some other stuff. I told him, no, Dad, I'll just drink a beer with you. Yeah. And I love my dad, and I love my stepdad, and I love my grandfather. My grandfather is a big reason I am the man I am today.
It kind of made you grow up a little faster than everybody else.
Well, yeah, and don't forget, I'm expecting a child. Yeah,
Joe didn't have a good pull-out game as a young one.
Okay, so what age are you expecting a child? Are you 17 still or 18?
17.
Man, wow.
So you're going to graduate high school, and all that is already behind you.
No, I hadn't graduated yet.
Yeah, you haven't even graduated yet. Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of miles. That's a lot of miles you're putting on that car, and you're kind of at a fork in the road. Without fighting and wrestling, you very well might not be here today.
Well, for sure, positive. At that point, I had my son, honestly, not without fighting and wrestling, without my children. If it wasn't for me wanting to be a better father than I had seen, that's what did it. Our children. Now, that being said, I think immediately wanting to show them what it takes and push through all of that is very important. I remember holding my son while 9/11 happened, watching 9/11 happen. My son's just been born, a year older. It's crazy. There's so much.
Yeah. So from there, August 30th, 2000, Rage in the Cage 20, you got a title fight with the Mangler, Mike Berardi, and he is actually a student of the promoter, Roland Soria.
I had 102 temperature. I didn't warm up for the fight. I wore a sweater and was sweating profusely. The fence that we fought in didn't have padding or coating over it. It was just metal.
It was a dog kennel.
Yeah. And I believe maybe a ring around it. I'm not sure.
It was, they usually put a dog kennel around a boxing ring, and they just don't put the pads on.
We used the fence. I remember it cutting me a little bit.
Yeah. So how was it fighting for Soria as a promoter?
He was nice to me. Like, these promoters, if you win, it's fine. Everything's business as usual. When you lose and then you take it personal, or they set you up, which, ideally that's what you're never trying to set your own guy up. You're always trying to match him appropriately. And back in the day, you didn't know who was better. You had to find out. You couldn't watch a padded record. There was no tapology.
So
that
Joe,
was a new thing.
Back then, obviously you don't have any management this time. You're just kind of randomly taking fights, correct?
No, like Ted and Terry are managing me, which comes to be a problem.
Conflict of interest.
I had to pass. I was offered a fight against Matt Serra when I was 18, and they turned him down. The Ted and Terry turned him down in the UFC.
Oh,
everything happens for a reason, though, because then later, because I didn't take that shot, I was able to use the Ultimate Fighter, and that blew me up. So I don't regret anything.
So did you get a belt for that fight?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the same event for everybody listening at home. Antonio McKee fought Edwin Duizan, where Antonio came in to get set up, never got paid, and never got a belt. So Joe got his stuff. And that same promoter was criminally charged in 2019 for throwing like events at like hidden venues. And it's friggin' nuts. The promoter was crazy. November 29, 2000, King of the Cage 6, Eric Meters. He goes by Mr. Furious. He's out of Roughnecks MMA.
So I'm in junior college, and I'm working I'm doing concrete, and I quit because after 3 months of doing concrete, it was hard to go to junior college, concrete, fight, train, and be a dad and a husband. So I quit the concrete. I fly to Michigan. I couldn't go out and drink with everyone, but because I wasn't old enough and it wasn't a small town. So I beat Eric. I fly back to California the next day, weigh in for junior college state championships in Cerritos. I'm the #1 seed because I won the regional championship. And then I lose to the last ranked guy because I'm giving up 30 pounds. I just fought Eric Metters at 170, and I'm wrestling at 197 in college. And then when I fought Eric, he was actually really strong. I remember being able, I tried to get the takedown. I was like, wow, this guy's strong. So I ended up pulling guard and sweeping him twice. I used that reverse armbar sweep, something that Marcelo Garcia does really well from the reverse head, from an underhook.
Joe, here's the thing. You couldn't get the takedown. You got stuffed a couple times, and the way you would pull guard was incredibly innovative for the time. It was definitely people are doing that today, and you were doing it. And
you shoot double leg. You shoot a double leg, your opponent sprawls. So when they sprawl, it tends to be the hip that is on wherever the head is on. And so your next thing is going to be going into a single leg. And as they're going to continue to sprawl, and that's going to give you your half guard. So it's kind of just a progression: double leg, defense, single leg, defense, half guard.
So Joe would pull, get the guard pull, and then just reverse them. So he'd get the takedown anyway. And after that bout, obviously you win by decision. After that, you get a post-fight interview with kind of a renowned character in the sport of MMA at the time, Rafael Torre.
So I knew Rafael. He had trained at Millennia. I was helping his nephew train at the time. And yeah, he tried to use a few of us as his alibi when he killed that person. He literally, that's what you guys understand what Rafael did and everything.
Yes.
You guys can Google it. I don't like to bring negative into my life. I try to keep things positive. I have a choice. You have a choice how you're going to treat somebody and other people and what you put in. I don't even watch scary movies. So,
Yeah.
So were you shocked that you were all of a sudden his alibi?
oh no, he was using Romie and Batiste as an alibi, saying that he was training with us. I happened to be training with Romie and Batiste at that time for those couple days. And he was trying to say that he was with us and he wasn't. So I was like, oh, and I don't think Romie and Batiste helped any either. But I don't want to talk about that anymore, guys.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, no problem. I was going to ask you a question, but I won't.
So, Gladiator Challenge, obviously, Gladiator Challenge 2 is Ted Williams' event. Kai Kamaka, he's out of Hawaii, Jesus is Lord Academy. That's a pretty hard fight as well.
I think I Dorsed it, or no, I used a grape popper. It's like a reverse Doris where you underhook the head and you have the arm there almost in a Turk. And then I brought his ear to his hip, which kind of pops the neck.
So you get through Kai Kamaka with they call it the shoulder lock on your record, and you get into a rematch with Maurice Doom in a title fight, Mo Doom Gladiator Challenge 3. This is when you start using the cage to your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I always tried to use the cage to my advantage, but after you're in it enough, you start to learn to manipulate and use around it. It's like knowing the rules. It's very important, I'm a judge. I'm going to be a judge for the California Athletic Commission in starting April. And I'm very excited. But to do that, you had to take a course. You have to pass. There's so many rules and regulations and all this you got to learn and criteria. And that's important. And I did it originally because I wanted to learn the rules better so I could go around them while coaching. And that I use this as the cage, before there's regulations for the cage. It was to your advantage or disadvantage, and it was best to do that first.
Joe, that makes me really happy. What you're saying is I'm always saying we need to have more actual fighters be judges and referees and all this, because having people who've never been in a fight in their life, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, that's the direction things need to go.
Well, I understand their criteria. I understand it goes effective striking or grappling. Then it goes ring control, aggressor. And then it goes ring generalship or cage control. So Who was on top, who had their back on the fence, who controlled the center. And using that criteria, it's not too hard. Some fights I can see giving a 10-10, but you're not supposed to. It's supposed to be rarely done.
So Joe, did you fly to Arizona or did you drive there as well?
Drove to Arizona.
Okay, so
that rematch with Maurice was in San Jacinto.
Okay, so your first airplane trip to a fight was at Warriors Quest, where your co-main event against Ronald Jung.
No, my first flight for a fight was Eric Metters.
For Eric Metters. Okay. Well, your next bout, Ronald Jung, machine gun. He's 11-5.
Man,
fight win streak.
They set me up for that one. Ronald is one of the toughest men in the world. He's a steel worker. You shake his hand and you will remember you shook his hand. So before the fight, they go, "Hey, Joe, this is where he works. We're going to the radio station, do an interview. Let's moon him." So I moon him. He remembered that. I remember being announced. I remember I didn't take that fight 100% serious. I was very excited to go to Hawaii. You're right. I was like, I did a moped. I went to everywhere, and I was excited. And I gassed after the first round. I remember the second or third round happening, and he was in mount punching me. And I remember saying, Man, this is why they call you Machine Gun. Ronald's such a good guy too.
So you went to Hawaii, co-main, and that Hawaiian fight scene at this time is really burgeoning. Like there's a lot of super tough guys coming out of there.
That's the first time I hung out. Wait, no, the first time I hung out with BJ, I was cornering Jason Lambert against Cabbage. That one was a good time. That's when that might have been the second time I went to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Sorry, my memory. I'm just trying to remember things.
So Edwin Deweese is 2 weeks later at Gladiator Challenge 4. He went by Bam Bam. He definitely weighed a lot more than you. He's like a 50 Fight Club member when he retired, and he's 14-4. So you're outweighed and outsized and outweighed. He's taller than you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's when I really started protecting the leg lock, punch him in the face. Riggs was cornering him, I think, for that one, and good friends with him said that he used that, and and so that's what he used when he went to the UFC. I tried to make him give me props for it. I was like, "You told me you learned that from me," and they call it the Riggs. Would you tell everyone that you got it from me? He's like, "I don't know what you're talking about, Joe." So
That sounds Joe. Yeah. He's one of my favorites.
I got a question. This is 2001. Are you 18 yet?
Yeah, I just turned 18.
Okay, yeah. What are the
in 2000 in June?
Okay, so you had an interesting weekend that week, or like 3-day stint there on your 18th birthday. Didn't you have a story behind that?
18. I turned 18, got married, and graduated high school 3 days in a row. But that was that was after the Dave Roberts fight. Yeah, for sure. And then my son was born in December 11th.
That's some serious like bucket checklist on like married, graduated high school, had a kid. Yeah, it's crazy. That's insane.
Wow. And you go on to fight Ryan Painter at King of the Cage, another title fight. I think Ryan weighed 180 pounds. I think he trained at Shark Tank with Eddie Mills and House of Champions with Pete Cunningham. Mm-hmm. His record is not complete online. He's listed as like 0-3 or 5-1. The guy was a stud.
Brian Painter was the person that hit me the hardest.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, no. Jeremy Jackson was. Ryan Painter told me I hit him hard. I faked my shot, and I connected in the right hand right away, and then I took him down. Ryan told me I hit hard. It was after that I fought Jeremy Jackson, and I was mounted on him, punching him, and he punched me, and I wasn't expecting it. I was like, ow.
So your fight with Ryan Painter.
My memory's pretty good. I'm excited right now, guys. I don't got anything open in front of me. My eyes aren't wandering.
Well, I hate to
in and out drink.
I'm not trying to. Your next fight's definitely not Jeremy Jackson. So I wouldn't celebrate too quick.
Audio just went off. What was the next one?
Well, here with Ryan Painter.
What's the next one?
Ryan Painter, I think you got taken down in that fight. It was the first time, and it was a split decision. There's no way that match was a split decision. I think you kind of got brought in to get hosed, even though it was on your manager's event.
Did I win? I won.
You won by split decision.
Yeah, but I remember after the fight, he told me, he goes, "That was the hardest punch anyone ever hit me," and he was bigger than me.
Yeah, he was huge. He was huge. Your next fight's against Brad Gum, future UFC veteran or former.
This is the second time that this is going to be so upsetting. You guys want to, okay. So I drive out. I'm cornering Gerald Strebeck. Gerald's like, hey, he gasses after the first round. He's like, throw the towel in. I said, this towel? I grab the towel. I throw it under the cage. I said, that you go out there and you finish him in submission, or you get choked out, or you lose. And so then he went and he finished the guy in the triangle. And then I had to fight, and it's at altitude. And once again, I legitimately thought I beat Brad Gum. And this is the first time I fought him. So the three rounds go, and I thought I won. And then I hear and I lose the decision. And after the fight, Pops, this guy in the wheelchairs in the Southern California scene, comes up and he was judging. He says, Joe, I'm sorry. I gave the fight to the other guy because I was mad at Ted. You know, that pissed me off. But I knew I was gonna get to fight Brad again. I knew it in my heart, and I love a rematch. I love a rematch.
Let me frame this. Brad Gum, Gladiator Challenge 5. It's in Colorado. Brad is a former UFC veteran and a phenomenal catch wrestler. So you lose a decision, altitude. I think everybody underestimates altitude until they fight or compete, like under those circumstances.
But you don't understand, Mike. I had one of the judges that gave it to him come up and tell me after the fight, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he should pay you your win money.
He was close to death. He was close to death, and I cared about him, and I said it's okay.
I think that'd be grounds for like.
He's lucky you're not Marcus Davis.
That'd be grounds to be like, I'd like to have this fight overturned because he went against me for spite. Spite's not a reason that I lost a fight.
Yeah, that would be beautiful if there was a commission at the time.
A good point. And who do we have on there? We had Josh Thompson, where like that one fight he lost, he killed the guy, but his mom and his dad and my brother were the judges. I love the Wild West. You could do anything, and there's nothing you could do. I love it.
Well, Ted Williams does Joe a favor. And are you getting paid for all these fights, or have you been stiffed yet?
I was only allowed to be paid $500 because if you paid me more than that under the contract where they were receiving 33.3%, they would have had to take in their percentage, and I would have been paid less. Yeah,
is that what they told you?
Oh yeah. Oh, and they screwed. I've been screwed way worse by promoters and coaches.
But let me see if the math works out here. So you're making $500. They don't take a percentage. So you ask for $100 more, $600. You're now over. So and they take 33. So you'd actually make $400.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the ridiculous.
I don't know. They just pay me $500.
You know, everybody in the fight game could beat me up. I don't know how I could keep a straight face with that. You know, here, Chris, sign this. You know what I mean? It's like
well, I had already signed a contract when I was 16. Which
that's not even legal. You can't sign a contract till you're 18.
Well, I was able to get out of my contract when I wanted after.
Okay. After they made a shitload of money off of you.
No.
Yes.
No, not the money. Not for the UFC. I quit. I quit fighting, and I said, you know, I'm not going to fight for you guys. I was just tired of politics and stuff. I moved to Vegas to work on my black belt with Marc, but we haven't even got there yet.
No.
Yeah. So Joe, I know you don't want to go over a bunch of negative stuff too, but like you fought with Terry and Ted for a long time, and like as an outsider watching, you kind of had a reputation of like kind of being their guy. Like you were a protege, like a young guy coming up. They had every reason to take care of you. It sounds like that unraveled. They didn't really take care of you. Would that be a fair assessment?
I mean, maybe I lost. Maybe I had to get divorced over their assessments. You know, there's many things. You know, and But once again, probably should best to we choose what we put in our systems. So we can just navigate around that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Joe.
So for everybody at home, we've got a group of people that like to watch a lot of the old fights that we talk about, especially when something interesting comes up. In my notes, I generally, there's certain, I guess, tells of somebody playing like a hand. And whenever there's a giant trophy involved, usually that means less money. It's just like, we'll give you a huge trophy, but you're going to get paid like $300 less. So after all of these Gladiator Challenge fights, they always came in with a giant trophy for you.
Yeah, and I used to keep them. You know, I think they got lost in moves, and I like those trophies. There's something special about them. And I mean, you got to realize when I was in the UFC, I was paying Mike Winklejohn 10%, Greg Jackson 10%, and my agent was getting 20%. It's never been about the money. I always figured the love of money would send you to hell. And you know, Lovato Sr. has helped me understand that in the Bible it states that it's the love of money, not money itself and to love anything more than God. And that's really helped me with my walk and with my life. And just recently, you know, now I do not mind saving. It's not the baddest thing.
No.
Well, and Joe, back early in the 90s and even early 2000s, if you were fighting for money, you weren't very smart because there just wasn't a lot of money in there. You know what I mean? You did it for the passion and love of the sport. Everybody back
when
then.
I rematched Brad Gum, I got $5,000.
Yeah,
well, that's coming up.
So
as bad as that,
I was pumped.
the Brad Gum fight was, you fight Gary Alger. I think he's like 200 pounds. He's covered in prison tattoos. I have to assume it's a last minute fight or somebody they pulled from the audience.
No, yeah. Well, Gary was a Golden Gloves boxer. Was that a Gladiator Challenge fight?
It was.
And that was in Porterville.
I couldn't find anything on Gary. Like I didn't find any boxing on him.
Gary, so I ran in and my opponent pulled out the day of weigh-ins, and Gary was in the front, and he's like, and he was bigger than me, and he's
200
like,
pounds.
He's like, I would fight you if you just stood up with me. I'm a boxer, and he's like, yeah, I'll get paid, I'll do it. So I faked the takedown and punched him, I think, and then I think I finished him TKO.
Yeah.
That's what happened with that. And I remember like thinking, man, I don't know if he was just talking trash. He said it in front of me. You know, I'm sitting there, we're looking for an opponent. And he's like, yeah, because I'm smaller than him, maybe. I don't know.
So, you got a payday. You've got a canceled bout against Gary Talbert, and you get your rematch November 11, 2001, Ultimate Pancration against Brad Gum. You mentioned a $5,000
there was no pancration to that. That was closed fist, and it was in a ring shaped as an octagon. And after I won all 3 rounds, 2,000 people started chanting one more round, and I had to fight him another round. And I'm getting hairs on the back of my head, thinking the same thing that just happened against Maurice Wilson might come up and happen again. So I give it everything, and I got Chuck Norris coming after that fight. Some big security guard stops me, says, Mr. Norris, like to shake your hand, turns around. He was sitting next to my wife. He shook his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. It was awesome.
So originally you were supposed to fight Eddie Ruiz, but they switched the card around and moved Eddie to fight Luke Dyer. I would have enjoyed you versus Eddie. So Eddie competed in ADCC. He's one of Tank Abbott's like henchmen. Anytime Tank Abbott was involved in some sort of backstage brawl at a UFC, the likelihood of Eddie Ruiz being there is, more likely than not. When did this bout come together, and how did Eddie get subtracted from it?
I don't know. My job was to fight. I knew I wanted Brad. I thought I was fighting Brad the whole time.
Yeah, they mentioned it during. Yeah, I watched the fight. That's my information comes from the announcers. Nobody else. So I couldn't tell you.
I only wanted to fight one person. So maybe they had ideas of me fighting him, but the moment I found out that Brad was on the card, I was assuming I was fighting him, and I wasn't going to change my mind.
And that's in California, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you're out of Colorado. That helps. And you roll into.
I won all 3 rounds. I won all 4 rounds of that fight.
I mean, yeah, I don't think. I mean, was there any contract drawn up? Like, yeah, I'm not. No, I mean, I won the fight. What are we doing here? Did that not work? Yeah, okay, never
because
mind.
At Morongo, the next time at Morongo is when all the Mongols and Vogels got in a knife fight, and one of the referees got stabbed. Remember?
The ultimate athlete.
That was right after that. Yeah, Wes Combs. I used to coach him.
Were you there for that?
Wes was filling in for me. I passed on that one. Yeah, Wes was filling in, and my friend Sosa Infante.
So,
Wes
little
was
side
the
note.
general manager at the Spearmint Rhino Rialto at the time. Great.
Little side note: Wes Combs would be a phenomenal deep dive. Like, he is a rough character, and
he had a couple of bare knuckle
Wes is a super nice guy. Don't let him. I coached him in the beginning, and I know he's got a good heart. Don't let anyone. He's a good guy.
We're gonna get him on here eventually. You know, is he an A-level name? No, but his story is phenomenal. One of the coolest stories in MMA is actually Wes Combs. Yes, tough dude. You beat Brad Gum, you kind of get that little relief. You take a few months off. And for anybody at home that's got old school King of the Cage DVDs, you know, we talked about tells when playing a hand. Whenever your opponent doesn't have a pre-fight interview, it usually means he's not supposed to be in there. You fought Jerry Gunmo. he called himself a street fighter, and I think he had basketball shorts on. You made short work of him.
Yeah. Jerry, was that in the Gladiator Challenge?
Yes.
Yeah, Jerry, I'm pretty
King
sure.
of the Cage. King of the Cage.
Oh, King of the Cage? No, Jerry Gummo had a fight.
He was 1 and 2, and he called himself a street fighter.
Yeah, but he had fought Jason Maxwell with ringworm and beat him, I think. Or like Jerry, Jerry's record is not
accurate.
Is not accurate. Don't let Jerry was really tough. You know, when you start saying names like Jason Maxwell and you start remembering like guys like that, you know, that was where Jerry Gummo was fighting. So so he wasn't a fill-in. He might have been a fill-in, you know, because he wasn't at that elite caliber.
The names like Jason Maxwell, those are the guys that we like. Like those are the guys, the brick and mortar guys that built the sport what it is today. That's what this podcast is all about. Miguel?
No, I was just saying, I agree completely. Maxwell was no joke, and that tells me Gummo's no joke.
But he had fights with, I think he had fights with Jason. But that's like, I remember saying when I was going to fight him, like, all right, well, how am I comparing him? Like a little less than Jason Maxwell. Like he was tough.
I
think I was nervous.
Yeah. And March 15, 2002, you go and fight for Sven Bean at Ring of Fire against
Cruz. And he had just beaten Spratt. And I was like nervous. And he kept sprawling under the ropes. And so finally I did a standing knee bar. I did a rolling knee bar and put it in my armpit and almost dislocated his knee because he sprawled 3 times out of the ropes.
So Joe, are you still fighting at 170 at this point? Or are you at 55 yet?
No, I hadn't been at 55 yet. I think after this I go to 55. It's 70, 85, 215. Sometimes
you're kidding me.
Yeah, no, 205. I think what's his name was 215, Dave Roberts.
Well, Cruz Chacon weighs in at 205 for this fight.
Well, yeah, but I'm probably 180, you know?
Okay. And, you know, for those at home, when guys sprawl underneath the rope, it's not only to step a takedown, but to hook their feet on the lip of the ring to make it impossible for the takedown to take place. So Cruz Chacon is from Maytech Warriors. He's also managed by the promoter. You win by knee bar. It's a title fight, and they never bring you back.
Yeah, but at that point, I had like a Gladiator belt. I had a King of the Cage belt, or not a King of the Cage. I had a Ring of Fire belt, and I had a Rage in the Cage belt. So I started collecting.
Well, here, Roland Surreal was kind of a known scumbag. I mean, and that's not me saying it. That's the 3 fighters that we had: Joe Riggs, Seth Bagsinski, and Drew Fickett. All of them call him a used car salesman. Sven Bean, you know, never brings you back. I think it's kind of par for, yes, yeah. Kind of par for the course for him as well. King of the Cage 15. I'll say it. He owes me money. June 22nd, 2002. King of the Cage 15. Jeremy Jackson. This is a legit fight.
I was supposed to fight Romie Aram. I had trained 6 months for that fight, or 4 or 5 months. It was serious. I knew Romie was good. Romie got hurt. Jeremy stepped in. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time because I was ready. I took him down. I mounted him. I was punched him. I think I got TKO victory. But from that mount, he had punched me from his back, and it was the hardest punch I had been punched yet. Because I remember saying, ow.
Joe, here's the thing with this fight. One, it's a vacant title. Jeremy Jackson's on a Team Freedom. He's got a win over Nick Diaz at this point. And
I competed with Nick against Nick in a grappling match in right after, or Never Tap or something. And he told me, he goes, dude, I watched your match with Jeremy Jackson. It helped me on the rematch, which was really cool. I really respected that.
You went by Little Joe at this point. You weren't Joe Daddy yet.
No, I was Wonder Boy.
They calling you Little Joe, the ring announcer.
It was Wonder Boy.
Okay.
I was Wonder Boy from 16 until I started having my second kid on the way. And my friend Brad said, man, you're not a boy anymore. You got 2 kids on the way. Like, you're like Joe Mama or Joe Daddy. And so I accepted that name, Joe Daddy, so that's where I got Joe Daddy. But before that, all my other ones, if you watch that Chris Brennan fight, they'll say Joe Wonderboy Stevenson.
Yes. The announcer may have messed up on this. Robert Ferguson is the trainer of Jeremy Jackson, Prince of Leg Locks. Did you ever train with him?
I'm really good at leg locks, so I'm not scared of anyone with leg locks. Here's some rules for leg locks. Rule number 1, don't do leg locks with somebody better at leg locks than you. Rule number 2, feet fight feet. Rule number 3, feet defend feet. Rule number 4, twisting leg locks, beat straight leg locks. So it's like, so you follow these guidelines and you do okay.
So you go from Jeremy Jackson, you fight Millennia MMA, Romie Aram, King of the Cage, October 19, 2002.
I gassed. Talk about overtraining. I kept training. I was in Big Bear for that one. I wanted Romie so bad. And I remember we were both so tired in the 3rd round. I had a moment to take his back, and I ended up leapfrogging over his back. Oh, and I was so mad. And right there, I was like, there goes the fight. I remember Larry Landless asking me, are you okay, Joe? And me being like, yeah, I'm fine. And then Romie punching me in the belly. Crazy times.
So with that, you fight Romie Aram. It's kind of controversy with Romie at this point. He wins the King of the Cage belt and takes a UFC contract because he only had a 1-fight deal. He got sued by Terry Treblecock. I know there was like a big hubbub in regards to him leaving. He fights Dave Strasser, gets cut after a loss, goes back to King of the Cage for 1 more fight, and then he retires. Romie Aram, I've got a ton of respect for. He is a super tough competitor. Do you think there were some mental issues on your end in regards to this, or was it just overtraining?
Definitely overtraining. And, those guys are Romie, Batiste, and even Javi, who I ended up having to fight. Those guys lived 20 minutes away. And when I was little, when I was 14, 15, 16, I would go down to their gym and train with them. That was the only cross training I really got, besides going to Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu and training with like Kevin Ramelman and Boss. Or not Kevin, training with Boss and like Marc Laimon and Genki Sudo. But really, I just stayed local area. So I had nothing but respect for them, which can be a hindrance in fighting somebody, yes. Yeah.
You go on Casey Balkelbush, you beat him, you use the cage door to your advantage. That's kind of a frightening
fight. I did not feel good about that fight because I got to meet Casey later. So first of all, guys, my son Tyler Ray Stevenson was born the day before that fight. Wow. I drove there. He was born in the morning, and I drove to Porterville to fight Casey Balkenbush and weighed in after my son was born. Then I fought him. My walkout song to that fight is "You Are My Sunshine, My Only Sunshine." And he was holding on to me, and I saw a pole exposed, and I started to slam his head into that pole until there was a pool of blood. And then I started to elbow him until the referee pulled me off. And that was one of the few times I've ever not been able to control myself in a fight. And I don't regret anything I did in that fight, but I do regret hanging out with Casey later on in life with my friend Marc Beecher and him missing a tooth and saying, what happened to your tooth? And him saying that it was, my fault. And in that fight. And Casey is a great kickboxer, guys. If I would have stood up with him, he would have knocked me out.
Joe, the thing with this is the cage is obviously a danger for anybody that's participating in it. At any point, did King of the Cage think about putting a pad over like the exposed bar?
Well, at what point is for sure padding it and doing your best to that, but I was looking for spots that were exposed and creating spots that were exposed. And if it's available and you're a professional, then you better make sure you're aware of that.
Oh, for sure. For sure. You know, for sure.
I never felt bad about doing it to anyone because of
it's just an extra corner pad. You know, hey, Terry, throw an extra corner pad just right here.
Maybe they didn't do it because they wanted for Joe's advantage, man.
No, that wasn't a corner. That wasn't a corner pad. That was a bottom base bar.
Yeah.
That one was a base bar.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. They needed a pad over it. So from there, all right, April 13, 2003, you're at Eagle Mountain Casino. We've talked about this fight with this event with a few of our past guests. The roof was leaking at this venue, and there's towels strategically placed inside the ring to catch the raindrops while people were fighting inside the cage. You fought Chuck Kim.
Yeah, he was a black belt. I think I went for an arm bar. He pulled out, and I went to an omoplata. I believe I finished that with an omoplata.
You won with an arm bar actually at 103.
No, they called it
fast.
Okay.
No, they called it wrong. Yeah, so imagine having high guard. You pivot. Now I have an arm bar. You pull your arm out that I'm attacking, and you leave the other arm in. I'm going to push it to an omoplata.
So Chuck Kim, freestyle fighter, comes in at 1-3, but two of his losses are Oleg Tiktarov, and he went almost 11 minutes with Pat Miletich.
Jeez.
So he's legit.
That's bad management.
You know, line him up against Joe Stevenson after that. That's not pretty. You had mentioned that you liked, you started working on your stand-up because you wanted to punch Thomas Denny. That fight took place May 15, 2003.
I drank so much Everclear after that fight that my friend was in a bathtub. And then I had to drive to Torrance the next day and go against Carciano Warneck, who won the Mundial Championships. I had to go against Henner Gracie, Jason Miller, Tyrone Glover. And I beat Carciano Warneck after 35 minutes. I lost to Henner after 30. And then I went heads up with Jason and Tyrone. I think I had to step out of the tournament though because I was shot. They put me up a weight division. They put me at 170 plus when I was supposed to go down. I mean, with the Thomas Denny fight, he shot. I wanted to hit him. He shot. I guillotined him. I have a good guillotine. He said that his tongue had bit his mouthpiece, pushed his teeth into his tongue, and he bit his tongue, and that's why he tapped.
Yeah, it was guillotine 35 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
doing pretty good at recalling these fights.
Dude, you're doing
Very
excellent,
good.
brother.
Very good.
What was there some bad blood with Thomas? He's a shit talker? Was it somebody he said?
We used to train together. We used to train together at WCG, and then he had left to start his own gym. And I remember how like it was when we were training. I was the head coach. I was the number one student. Ted wasn't there. I ran class. So when they told me he wanted to fight me, I felt disrespected because I thought I helped him.
Okay.
And,
No, Rico Ciparelli was in his corner.
Yeah. I don't know. You know, I was supposed to fight. I was offered to fight against all those Raw guys. I think even Frank Trigg shortly after that or around that. And I was fine with it. But it just, you know, I was taking what was in front of me.
So Dan Severn versus the Tugboat, also known as a pro wrestler. Gary Timmerman was the headliner for that event. Was that just an all-out brawl, or did you have to
watch that? No, I had to drive. I had to drink and then go to Torrance, go against all the Gracies.
I'm not going to say it was a fixed fight, but you missed a really good pretend fight there, Joe.
Can't be true, Mike.
He's doing important things.
Right. So your turnaround is with Marcos Kiko Casella, who
now you start to see me box.
Yeah, he's a black belt, high-end black belt.
Mm-hmm. And then
he's supposed to be Carlson Gracie. Yeah, Carlson Gracie has him listed as the next big thing coming out of his academy. And man, it's August 10th, 2003. Were you a little nervous going in with such a high-end black belt?
No. I was just going to hit him, and I was going to hit him. He wasn't going to take me down. And at the point, he couldn't submit me. I was a brown belt, and to this day, other than fights and competitions, and I don't get tapped. I've been tapped probably by 50 people my whole life. I'm 39. It's not easy to tap me, and you're gonna get punched. And Kiko got punched.
So when you start really focusing on doing stand-up, that just give you a whole new level of confidence. Like, man, now I'm good everywhere.
You know what happens, Chris, when the grappler starts to learn that he can do punches and it's easier, then you start punching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, Marc Laimon is your coach at this point. You're mentioning
Nope. Still under 10.
Still under 10. Okay. All right. So you go from there to, you beat Kiko corner stoppage, 421 at the end of the round. He quit after he realized he couldn't get you to the ground. You broke him. And man, I'm not going to say it was your coming out party, but it certainly cemented to people who you were as a fighter, because Kiko he had a big rep going into that fight. Demetrius Jefford, did they pull him from the audience? Your next opponent?
Dimitri, he was a black kid with longer hair?
You know what? I have in here, he's an independent fighter, 185 pounds. You dropped him 3 or 4 times. You never went for the kill. You're just kind of looking at Herb Dean to stop it every single time.
Was that in Porterville?
I don't have the location written down.
Gladiator Challenge or King of the Cage?
Gladiator Challenge.
That was the guy that was the boxer. Yeah, I guess the other guy, that was the boxer.
Okay.
That's why I dropped him 3 times. I dropped him 3 times because I couldn't take him down.
Okay,
that was the boxer.
Joe, you kept looking at Herb Dean going, just do the right thing.
Stop it. Yeah.
Do the right thing.
Yeah, but I had to deal with him, or I wasn't going to take him down and do that to him. Because he was a boxer. And so it was just going to be much more of the same.
So shortly after that, less than 2 weeks, it was November 2nd, 2003, King of the Cage title fight, 155 pounds. So you drop down a weight class. It's Thomas Schulte. Now, Thomas Schulte is out of Fit NHB. This guy has
At that time, I found out my ex-wife had done things to compromise my marriage. 2 weeks prior to that fight, I wanted to quit. That was right after that fight. 2 weeks later, I had found out that next time, and I went up to Thomas before that fight, and I said, "You've been my reason for living for the last 2 weeks. I wanted to drink myself to death." And he looks at me at weigh-ins. He says, "You too, brother. I can't wait for this." And I said, "No, I found out my wife was cheating on me with my best friend, and I want to just die, and I'm gonna take it out on you." There was knees to downed opponent at that fight, and he shot in, and I had been working extensively on my strikes, and I landed the best knee I ever landed in my whole life, knocking him out. I woke up in my friend's house that next morning, freaked out, not knowing where, because I had finally let those demons out. And it was a very difficult time in my life. And for example, the next fight I fight is Joe Camacho, and I think, and I'm drunk. No. Which was after that? So
wait, Thomas Schultz, 7-1, fit NHB, 12 plus UFC veterans came out of there. Currently training, or I think Taylor Starling also was out of there. Chris, bare knuckle fighter, very talented. Your next fight is actually less than a month later. It's Corey Cass, and you're only getting $500 for these fights.
Corey was set up. He told me that Corey's my friend. He's a good guy. I didn't know. They told me that, he was stepping in to fight me and talking trash. And my fight was accordingly because I thought he was talking trash. Come to find out, he had a whole different opponent that whole time. And then, you know, at weigh-ins, our opponents swapped and they put him against me. And I feel bad for that fight. Corey's a tough guy.
These guys are not.
I'm a mean guy at that time.
These guys are not your friends, man. I mean, they're seeming like they're just kind of bags of crap.
You end up fighting them every event. Like they're literally.
I know, man. They're totally trying to utilize. Yeah, sickens me, man.
I mean, you're talking about a guy. We haven't even gotten to the Ultimate Fighter yet. Which Joe like cut his teeth in. And you know, Corey is the inaugural WEC 155-pound champion. He beat Papis Martinez, who some would argue the reason WEC even got that contract is because the relationship with Papis. Papis never really made a name for himself, like outside of the California circuit.
He was training with me. Papis trained with me for a little bit, but he and I had the same problem. We like to drink.
I like Papis. I
like Papis. I don't know if he's still drinking. I hope he's not.
So you right after this, actually September 5th, 2003, you're in the corner of Charles Crazy Horse Bennett. Did he train with you?
I was coaching him for a very long time. He kept calling me out, and I said, Charles, you know, if you call me out, I'm going to have to fight you. He's like, why? Because you call me out. He's like, oh. I was like, okay, stop it. I was training him. I trained him just like I did Thomas Denny. And then after I was done training him, he went and trained with Thomas Denny.
How was he as a student?
He was receptive he was very quick to be able to do technique that he saw and worked well for him. Athletic. But if it didn't make sense to him, he wasn't going to do it.
That's interesting. That's
you
interesting.
You have to make sure it's relatable. Why would I need this? Because of this. Oh, okay.
We've tried to get him on here a few times. You know, he wants like $2,000. I don't know. It is what it is. February 20th, 5 years prior, you had a fight with him, Joe Camacho, King of the Cage 33. You're training out of Team Quest.
No. Still out of WCG.
You know what? Joe Camacho is training out of Team Quest. And are you sure? Wait, did you have basketball trunks on?
I'm not sure.
No, here. Drunk. Sometimes I know it's get a little flipped. You had Rico Rodriguez and Dan Henderson in your corner.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
So probably. You were probably out of Team Quest at this time.
No, I was not.
How does that happen?
Well, I think there's some underlining things that I do not wish to discuss about that may be personal over family issues. So, yes, I'm still technically WCG, but you'll see many people with me. Yeah.
Okay. So you get a rematch against Joe Camacho, and from there you launch.
I might have came out to Team Quest though too, but I mean I'm still coaching at WCG at the time. I think.
Yeah, I mean you're wearing a Dan Henderson T-shirt right now too. I might add.
Well, it's because I'm the head jiu-jitsu coach here.
Makes sense.
You know that concludes our before the UFC segment. Let's open it up to some questions. You train with Marc Laimon. Marc Laimon has obviously got a very, very big personality.
Big reason on how I coach and who I am today. I still talk to Marc. I tell him
how was he as a coach, particularly at jiu-jitsu tournaments? Because I know he can be a little loud at times.
He was the best coach in the world. He is the best coach in the world. You know, I'm at CIF yelling for my son wrestling. I was like, go Frankie. And this other guy starting to scream up and he's like, calm down. And I'm like, that's my son. He's like, that's my son. And I was like, well, I'm sorry for you because my son's going to finish this. You know, emotions can get that's not coaching, but I coach the same way when I'm on the mat. That's my wrestler. That's my fighter. And I learned that from Marc. You know, people that coach out of fear because they were taught to teach out of fear never really catch the best, that never are on top. every champion that grabs that mic always has this heartbreaking, beautiful story, comeback story, because they have to be an optimist to be a champion. Because you have to work through adversity and crazy things to do this. And I say that because Marc was so good at projecting that for you. He would make you fall in love with it. You see, I coach my guys to where, like the kids, where if their parents don't show up to my practice and say, make sure he gets beaten up today because he was bad. If they want to punish the kids, they have to watch my class because they love doing my class so much that not being able to do it is a punishment. I coach from a place of love, which is way more dangerous than a place for fear. Because if I do my job right, these kids will give up their lives to defend themselves or somebody they love. And that's what you want when you coach somebody that's going to fight. You don't want, I've watched many people that were coached out of fear quit 14 minutes into the fight. But I've watched those same people that came from a place of love get their butts kicked for 14 minutes and come back in that last minute. And that's what we love about this sport. I feel like I kind of got to let you guys go because my friend Sam is here an hour ago.
I got you.
Maybe we can catch this another time. Or
could we do this again? We get you.
Yeah.
We thank you so much for your time, man. I know you got a lot going on. Really appreciate you being on here. It's fantastic.
All right.
No worries. Tag me in it when it comes out. I'd love to watch it.
100%. For everybody,
thank you very much, sir. Pleasure to meet you.
Everybody at home, Marc Laimon has got a gym in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Phenomenal school. Highly suggest you guys go there.
Oh yeah, he's great. Best like I said, best coach ever in the world.
That's awesome.
And
that's a big personality.
By the way, you know this. I'm the coach for the U.S. kids team, and I'm the coach for the U.S. adult team right now. So when I say that guy's good, that's coming from that. Like, that guy is amazing.
That's where we can pick it up because I got some Marc Laimon questions. I saw Marc compete because he came and won the Abu Dhabi trials that we did, and it's about him competing there. But we'll pick up so you can go see your friend. We'll pick up the next time.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
God bless everyone. Thank you. I was supposed to talk about co-combat and all of that. I think we started off talking about all of that. I do want to just mention that co-combat.com is a token that's helping work on MMA fighters' retirement and also work on MMA fighter insurance, and has also already started sponsoring the youth team for the United States, which will be competing in Bahrain at the World Championships. So I wanted to throw that out there if you guys are into crypto.
100%. We'll put it in the bio as well so people can find out about it. Thanks, Joe. Be good.
Thanks, guys. God bless.
So, Mike, we got another one, and this is a big one. Joe Daddy Stevenson in the books.
Well, when you get a guy that's fought since the age of 16, it's kind of hard to pass on that.
Yeah, this guy is a guy that he didn't follow any script. He was writing it as he went along. You know what I mean? It's like that's about as unique a story as I've ever heard in terms of just outside of fight, married to an older woman when he was 16, high school, living with his parents, fighting professionally. It's like that's interesting stuff. Wild, and he's blossomed obviously post fighting into an upstanding person as well. So just it was great to meet him. I liked it. I enjoyed that one.
He was real positive. Didn't want to talk on the negative. I think I had.
Oh, I know you hate that.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I don't like that. But I had an entire page dedicated to negative questions. So I'm like, I better put this over here.
Yeah, but he let us know that, and we respect that. Yeah, we don't even have to talk. You respect. We understand that he's asking for respect, and you give it to him because you don't want to go into negative. There are guys who go there, and we'll take that all day too. But if you don't, there's so much more to it that we really don't.
Yeah.
Don't do as well, and he delivered with a lot of cool stuff. So I was happy and impressed.
The thing with him as well, he's been around so many blocks, so many corners, kind of got used and abused by the system. And I think if anything, he was guilty of just trusting people a little too much, more than he should have. And he was a child at the time. And, you know, at the end of the day, he's teaching at Dan Henderson's gym and heavily involved in wrestling still. It's obviously saved his life. And I think his son just fought his first MMA bout the other day.
Wow. That's intense.
So,
and another guy that you can sense either a student or perhaps even a second generation could be coming because, hey, he's been in a fight game his whole adult life. And what else he got, like he said, you know? So thank you very much, Daddy, and to the fans out there, like, subscribe, and share, and comment. And Mike's got some personal thanks to give you.
Yes. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we've got T-shirts coming. We're going to do a Chris Lytle on the front, Lights Out Podcast on the back. We'll probably do an old school integrated fighting logo on it as well. We're designing it now. If you guys have fun, unique ways of sharing this podcast, you will get one in the mail. You just got to let us know. If you look in our bio, Instagram is probably our best way of getting a hold of us, but there's an email in the bio and several other different ways. We're not selling these T-shirts. You have to share this program with friends, family, however it is you do it. Leave us a really nice review on iTunes, and we'll send you a T-shirt as long as you get a hold of us and show us what you did. And keep in mind, Miguel, this recording is going to be here 15 years from now. That doesn't mean in like 2028, you sit here and go, well, I shared it. Where's my T-shirt? And then give us a thumbs down. It's not how it works. This is for the people that have been here from the beginning that have helped us out. There you go, Miguel. Sorry. That's some sort of weird disclaimer. I know we're going to get dumped on because of it. I don't care.
Mike's that tells me Mike's going out of pocket for mailing the shirt, so he's already surly. But you will get it. You will get it, but he's surly already. So just help me out,
you
guys.
ain't going to do, Miguel? For these people in 2024 that are listening to this, going, hey, where's my T-shirt? This was recorded 3, 4, 5 years ago. I'm going to go to the Goodwill store. I'm going to spray paint Lights Out Podcast on a shirt, and that's the one I'm sending you. Not these ones. These ones are for the people that have been here in the beginning. Sorry.
Yeah, this offer expires in summer of 2022.
Yeah, see, that I sounded tough, and now I feel better. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just yelled at, like, an imaginary person to an argument that doesn't exist that's going to take place in the future. So now I feel more manly.
We deal with fighters all freaking day here. It's very hard to feel tough. It's like I can never express myself. So yeah,
that felt good.
Thanks, guys.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.